you've mentioned my cricketing achievements, which seem in the distant past. But I guess there is a link in that back then, my dream was to be a professional cricketer, and I had a county cricket trial, which I didn't turn up to. And I didn't turn up to it because I was afraid of failing. Didn't know that was what was going on at the time. And some 12 years later, as part of an NLP training journey, became aware of a pattern of avoidance of failure and fear of failure, and was able to move past that. And it's that 12 years on has led to me being where I am today. So the reason why I do what I do is because ultimately our mission with Magenta, my own mission, is to help people to avoid self-sabotage. And as business owners, a lot of my coaching clients are business owners. And of course, when faced by stress, overwhelm, pressure, sometimes challenges within the business with resentment from different members of the staff who are working together, sometimes those pressures can lead us to getting close to putting the finger on the self-sabotage button. And that can be in a big way by making big mistakes in the business, or it can be in a subtle, small way by damaging our relationships by the way we speak to someone. And that can be personally as well as professionally. Sometimes those closest to us get the worst end of the deal in that respect.
And I might just jump in and ask a quick or make a quick point there, Bevis, that you could perhaps help us with. I'm seeing amongst some clients and friends a real divide, and I know there's people on this call that are seeing it within their businesses, a real divide between those people that have kept their business running for their employer for a period of time, and those people that have been furloughed, now coming back off furlough. Some of them haven't had their holiday removed from them during the holiday, during their furlough period. So they're now coming off furlough and booking holidays, and the bitterness and resentment that's starting to happen between these two silos is quite noticeable. I mean, could you just sort of talk us through how we can cope with that within our businesses?
Well, here's the thing, a lot of that is quite natural. However, and I was thinking about this when you asked me to talk, because I was thinking, crikey, there's a lot of challenges and lots of triggers here. But ultimately, whether it be resentment, bitterness, or stress, overwhelm, or pressure, all of those have the same root cause. In that ultimately, if you think of like stress, for example, if you put a ruler under pressure and then you return it back to its normal state, it'll be fine because you've just applied a pressure over a frequency of time. If you then pull that ruler and leave it there for 5 minutes, by the time you bend it back, there'll be white lines on the ruler because it's been pressure applied over a period of time. That's when it becomes stress. And of course, if you keep bending, then of course you get to a breaking point, a snapping point. So there's a misunderstanding really about the word stress. It's something that's massively overused, because really what stress is it's a negative emotion. And for some people it's bitterness or anger, some people it's frustration, some people it's anxiety or fear, some people it's disappointment. So that stress or those emotions, then when people act from that emotion, that's when we get problems occurring. And of course, what we really need to do is to demonstrate and to grow awareness so that people realize that if they're acting out of negative emotion, the only person who's going to suffer from that is themselves. Now, we don't want to demonize it either, because it's a natural thing. We've all snapped at a loved one. We've all said things we've regretted. But what we really want to do is actually train people to become emotionally resilient. And what that requires is a greater deal of awareness that it's actually our own thoughts that create our own emotions. And what we want to do is be able to take that step back. We've all heard the phrase, the Stephen Covey thing around, if you're going to go and chop a forest down, you need to sharpen the axe. Or as one of my clients said, no, I need to buy a chainsaw. Well, quite right. So, but yet we all use our minds. All of the business leaders I coach, we all use our minds. And who's sharpening the axe? Who's taking the time for themselves to look after their axe or their chainsaw to make sure that they make good decisions? And I think what is hugely important is to create a culture where it's okay to look after yourself. And it's not about being selfish, it's about learning to be self-full. Because everybody benefits from leaders being in a good psychological place. And then everybody benefits from members of staff being in a good psychological place. In essence, we want to avoid judgment. As one of my clients said, she said, "You'd have me forgive Adolf Hitler." And I was like, well, how do you feel if you don't? Ultimately, if you don't forgive, if we don't if we don't let go of judgment, it's like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer. So ultimately, when it comes to resentment and issues within the workplace, what we really want to do is train people to understand that it's the triggers, the redundancies, the overwork, that is the trigger. What we really need to do is create a release valve so that each person finds themselves feeling emotionally a little bit saner, because there have been so many challenges. So creating a culture where people are able to look after themselves is tricky.
So you mentioned a couple of things there, Bevis, that I probably have also been guilty of, which is almost a sort of hero type mentality where I think as the leaders of our business, expecting a lot of the people in our businesses that we know they're putting a shift in. We know that those people that are keeping us in business are going above and beyond. But we've also got to be seen to be going above and beyond as well. And I think we're taking too much pressure on ourselves. I
think you're absolutely right. And that's definitely what I'm seeing. If you're going to have a healthy culture within an organization, we've got to start at the top. And business leaders, if you think about, I mean, for me, what is business success? Well, actually, it's the ability to make clear, strong, good decisions. It's the ability to communicate clearly. It's the ability to have a mission. That's why we're doing what we're doing, a clear vision, and know that that links to our values, which is why I'm such a fan of motivational maps, as Cassandra and we both know. That's what excellence looks like. Well, all of those require the individual to be in a good frame of mind. Every single one of them.
And I think we're coming to an audience of people that have probably never been in a worse frame of mind, or certainly they'll recognise their worst frame of mind during these last few months. What typically would you suggest people do, as if you like, where the rubber meets the road, that we can do to start to pull ourselves out of this and give ourselves that bit of time and build that culture that you talk about?
Well, I think the first step is almost looking at growing level. Also, step one, we've got to be kind to ourselves, because I think the expectations that we have of ourselves are often so high that we cause ourselves problems. It's a Tony Robbins quote that we massively overestimate what we can do in an hour, a day, a week, a month, and a year, and massively underestimate what we can achieve in 5 years. So I think we have to accept that it's okay that during these periods of turmoil, you learn what you're capable of as a leader, which is great, but also accept that that's not how you want to be running your business longer term, because actually you can't, it's not sustainable. So in terms of brainwave activity, the spikier the brainwave activity, the less long you have that energy for. And then what you end up with frantic periods of work and then needing a distraction. And it's much healthier to lower brainwave activity throughout the day. There's lots of things that we can do about that. But one of the things that I found hugely useful for myself is to realize that you are not your brain. You're not most people think that they are their body and their thoughts and their emotions. Yet as a human being, I mean, I think as a parent, I haven't strangled my kids, which is a sign that I'm not my brain, because there have been times when I've wanted to. So if we know, there's a chap who's left Google as a senior exec in Google who's created this happiness app, and he's named his brain Betty. Well, why has he done that? Because if Betty starts having a moment, it tells Betty to calm down. So who's the person that's telling Betty to calm down? Well, that's his higher self. That's the higher brain, whereas the lower brain, the amygdala, the chimp paradox, great book, the chimp or the monkey mind, is the lower brain. And I think everyone will have got frustrated with a member of their team or got disappointed at things that are happening outside of themselves. And the danger is when you act from that place, that's when we subtly hover over the self-sabotage button. So those are the moments to metaphorically and physically take a step back. Practically, if you have a routine that helps you get in a good frame of mind for the start of the day, you'll have all read books about morning routines and what have you, and I was very skeptical all about that stuff, but you definitely need a release valve in your day somewhere.
And interesting what you mentioned about if you like, that reptilian mind, which, to be fair, I think a lot of us have allowed to overtake some of our thinking, that almost catastrophic thinking of what's going to happen. We've got David, who's in the banking industry, on the call. You know, we saw the stock market plummet because everyone's amygdala brain suddenly started to trade their shares off the stock exchange. And of course, that's now gone back to almost pre-COVID levels, certainly in America.
Yes.
So anybody that didn't trade out on this call, well done, and anyone that bought in, perhaps even better. What advice would you suggest to us now going forward? I think we're through the worst of this now. It's about how we build resilience going forward.
Yes, I mean, I think that's one of the things I enjoyed you mentioned to me when we spoke last week was about your decision to focus on service over sales. And I think ultimately business and personal resilience are linked. If you think of a strong oak tree in a tornado, the oak tree will get uprooted, and that might have real strength, whereas the palm tree will flex all the way down to the floor and spring back. And why is that? Because, of course, the palm tree has a greater degree of flexibility, and it's that flexibility that's required. And one of the things that one of my favorite books is a Deepak Chopra book, 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, which I would never have read 5 years ago because it sounds like it's got a fluffy title. But that's all about focusing on service, how you can serve other people, how you can focus on detaching from the outcome. So it's about doing the right things and not getting too hung up on the outcome. So there's a lot of trust involved there, but if you do the right things, ultimately that will lead to upturn in business. So the higher self will say, how can I serve? How can I help? The lower brain will say, what's in it for me? So ultimately, what we need to be doing is listening more to that higher self. We're all going to have those moments of the franticness, and it's realizing that when we're acting out of that fear or anxiety or panic, we're not actually going to make good decisions. So let's think about how we can serve, how we can help support other people, and we'll come out of it with stronger relationships and improve business levels as a result.
That's fantastic. Well, we've certainly covered a lot of the things that you and I talked about last week when we were preparing for the call. I know it's something that is on a lot of people's minds, and we don't ordinarily do this, but I am very interested to hear, while we've got you on, is there anybody else with anything that they would like to ask, or any comment that they would like to, or anything they'd like to get Bevis to comment on, for example?
I've just noticed from Sandra's talking about self-awareness being the key to resilience. So perhaps I'll just touch on that for a moment while we're waiting to see if anybody wants to ask a question. And absolutely is key, is that higher self is effectively the awareness of our thoughts and emotions. And it's such a simple thing. But of course, if we think we are our thoughts and emotions, we act from whatever place that we're in. Whereas there's even nowadays, with scientific equipment, with neuroscience, they can measure brainwave activity and emotions and demonstrate that when you're not feeling good, you're not thinking clearly. So ultimately, learning to find, and it doesn't mean we don't want to beat ourselves up if we're not feeling good, because that just makes it worse. It's about accepting how we're feeling and taking that as a sign to take a step back, using, as Sandra said, that self-awareness, so that when you do come to make decisions, you're making them from a place of awareness.
Another point that sort of crossed my mind periodically during the last few months was you were almost looking for someone to blame for this. And a friend and I were having a conversation about investment, actually, and how much money we were lamenting we'd lost. We thought we'd lost all this money. Our pensions were now worth so little. But of course, we hadn't lost it, because neither of us are anywhere near retirement, him more than me even. And yet there it was, sort of in our face, looking for someone to blame. So we blamed the stocks that we were advised to go into. We blamed the financial advisor for not having enough time to phone us. Is that a normal thing, and what can we do to sort of get over that?
Yeah, well, I think it's one of my favorite and most simple of our NLP training tools. We talk about cause and effect, and at which side are you on? Are you being negatively affected by someone or some situation or circumstances, or are you at cause, taking action, thinking about the solution? So it's solution versus problem focus. And the moment we blame somebody else, we disempower ourselves from finding a solution. And the beautiful thing about this time is we're all in the same boat. Everybody's going through the same thing. My business has been affected, so is yours, so is everybody on this call. Yes, some people are profiting, but then things will change for them in the future. So it's about really realizing that, yes, we will blame, but the quicker we move from being affected negatively to taking some action is the quicker A, we'll feel better, and B will make better decisions as a result.
Fantastic. Well, that's probably all we've got time for now, unless anybody would like to have a quick question. Otherwise, I think, Bevis, you've got a lot of resources on your website, and you've got a book that we can, I've no doubt, get from Amazon, can we? Or do we buy it from you directly?
Yes, you can either. So it's available on Amazon. It is slightly less expensive for me personally, so that's obviously available. I mean, the other things to think about, motivational maps are useful. I know Cassandra's involved in the group, so she'll be able to help you out with that. So yeah, and anybody who's interested in learning more about NLP, I'm more than happily have a conversation or give them a nudge in the right direction.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Bevis. Lovely to hear your input. Very calming, actually, and great to hear a Yorkshireman talking about fluffy stuff.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a journey for me, that one.
That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. I really hope that was of value, and we look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, all the very best, and bye for now.